Hello, this is Heather Harries with Let Them Fly, and today we're talking all about technology. Now, I'm so non-technological, it's just not true, but we have Nicole here who is all about technology, as that's her industry. I guess for me, technology and kids is a difficult subject. On the one side, we're saying to the children, here's your iPad, here's your phone, here's your computer, go and do this amazing work. And particularly with iPads and with integrated technologies, one of the things we're doing is we're almost setting our children up to be addicts. And we see from all the research that technology is addictive. And then we have this big problem where we turn around to our children and say, give me your iPad back, you haven't got that anymore. And they literally have a meltdown as that withdrawal of addiction is taken away from them. I think even as an adult, I find technology is addictive. I'm always on my phone. I find it really hard to put it down. And I know that when I do put it down, I'm kind of looking for it. And I know that it's great in terms of communication, and things like Facebook, which we didn't have when I was much younger, is a great way for us to be able to communicate. But I wonder sometimes whether I'm actually communicating with people outside my family more than I'm communicating with people inside the family. And that's probably the wrong way of doing things. I also love the fact that, TVs have got lots and lots of channels, far more than we ever had when I was a child. But I still have a real concern about the amount of time our children spend on devices. And we're going to talk about that coming up. Don't get me wrong, I love technology and I love the idea that all that information is at our fingertips, and I love the fact that I can literally access any fact I want to. But I do think there are some pluses and there are some minuses, huge highs, huge lows of how useful technology to children actually is. So let's hand over and let's enjoy the discussion about technology and kids. Nicole, over to you.
Mm-hmm. I do, with screen time and technology, it's one of those things that I do think, obviously, it's amazing. The way technology's come on, I work in IT and it's just boomed since the days I was in uni. So there's a huge part of it where you have to keep up. You have to let your children be on it. We have to be on it as adults. I remember seeing my grandma and she didn't understand that her banking had gone digital. She wasn't getting letters. So even the older generations and the younger generations, we do have to always keep up. But I do find it frustrating how much of our lives is becoming reliant on screens, I guess.
But I think screens even on TV. I mean, I can remember, now I'm showing my age a little bit here. I can remember sitting in front of the TV at about 3:30, I guess it was. We only had 4 channels then, and one of them was BBC, and there used to be a test page that the TVs used to put on before the programmes came on. And I can remember sitting and watching this test page, waiting for the TV programme to come on. But in terms of children's TV, there was 2 hours, and that was it. There was nothing else. So, if you wanted to entertain yourself, you had to be outside. Now, the entertainment is at their fingertips. I think I've seen children with the age of 5, and they've got mobile phones in their hands. How does that work?
I think, so maybe a different opinion to everyone else, but I think there's 2 very different things between TV and screen time. So I don't count the telly as screen time.
Okay.
Because it's stuck to the wall. You only watch something on it. You don't interact with it. So that actually doesn't change our brains in the same way as interacting with a game on the screen. So I definitely count those as 2 very different things. So when I count screen time, I count it as your iPads or your phone, is what you're touching. Because back when we used to watch telly, it didn't create the same addiction and the same changes in our brains as what the interaction with the screen and touching the iPads and the phones actually do.
Okay, that makes sense. I hadn't really thought of it like that. My other concern, and you can maybe help me out a bit here, is the amount of learning packages. And don't get me wrong, I love the fact that learning is very accessible and that it comes to us. But I look at iPads and I look at those learning programs, and whereas in my generation, okay, we are going back. In my generation, we used to use pens, and the children were practicing their fine motor skills all the time, and they were forming letters. Now they're tapping at things with fingers, and I'm not seeing that same development with fine motor skills.
Yeah, and I think with technology, there has to be boundaries. I think for us as adults and as children, So they did a study, there was quite a big study done, and they gave a group of children under the age of 3 iPads from birth up, and they didn't give them to the other children under the age of 3. They did the study where, you look at the lights in the brain and what area that was lighted up. The children that didn't have the iPads had the creativity and the imaginative parts lit up in their brain because they were touching, they were using their fine motor skills. They were letting things fall on the floor and it made a sound. And the children that were using the iPads, they didn't have the imaginative and the creative part of the brain lit up. They had, I can't remember what it was called, but it was another section of the brain, which when they're obviously tapping on the screen and things are falling on the screen, it's just all in 2D, maybe 3D if they're using, something, a posher game. But what they did then was they let the 3-year-olds, they introduced the iPads to the 3-year-olds that hadn't had them. And the part of the brain that was associated with the digital lit up within a week. And they were just as advanced as the kids that had it from birth. So they catch up very, very quickly. But actually, if you don't let them not have that real life experience to touch things and let things fall, let things drop, throw balls, they actually slow down on the development of the real world from the iPads.
Oh, well, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. And what about how much screen time or how much device time should we allow our children to have?
So the World Health Organization has now come out and said for children under 2, absolutely none. And again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have the telly because I don't count TV as screen time. So under the age of 3, I didn't give my children any time on a game. So yes, when we travelled, they had an iPad and they had Netflix, but they weren't allowed YouTube to do this skip, next. Their brains thrive off the change and it can create unhealthy addictions. Whereas if they're just watching a show on the Netflix, if you're traveling or if you're in the car, don't get me wrong, on a flight, I was like, there's no rule. You have that iPad. And I even reintroduced the dummy to my 3-year-old. I was like, oh, it's a flight dummy, in your mouth. So, I have excessively used things when it is Netflix, but I wouldn't let them do games under the age of 3. They both only allowed games now over the age of 3. And now they've said it should be, for 2 to 5-year-olds, it should be around 1 hour a day.
Okay.
Which I think's a healthy boundary. Again, they might have half an hour on the iPad playing a game. They might have an hour of telly after school. And I don't have limits for the telly because I know as a mum, I also take them on their bikes. We play games, we do puzzles. So with the telly, some days we might watch 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon, but through the week we might watch 45 minutes. So with TV, I don't really have rules. If we're sick, it's on. If we're relaxing, it's on. But definitely with games and iPads, what you're interacting
there. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things about television is that if it's on in a family room, you're still interacting with each other and you're still talking, you're discussing what's going on at the screen and you're asking what's happening in terms of the plot. But I think when it's a one-on-one and it's you and a device, I do wonder about the healthy development of children where they're literally being sucked into this one device and very little conversation.
Yeah, and I think as well, you can't control what they're watching if they're sat with their back to you. Like when I'm stood cooking and I can see, cocoa melons on the telly, I know what they're watching and we'll sing along to it and we'll joke. But when they have their back to me with their iPads, they have different games and they're so good. Like my daughter's 6, she can now go onto the internet. She bought a game the other day and I was like, what? How have you even done that? They're so much faster. And she's got there is some good apps. So they came back from school with something called Scratch. And she was teaching me, and it was actually a basic learning to code because you plopped a little animal in the middle of the screen and you could make it go up, down, round, left, and then actually loop it. And she created a continuous loop. And this little animal was just flipping around the screen. And that's the basics of what I do of learning to code as an adult in computer software.
And I think that's really important. I mean, I think what there's no takeaway from the fact that our children will live in a digital world.
Yes.
I didn't live in a digital world, but I now, and I'm one of those people where I go in and I'm kind of, can somebody make the TV work for me? I can't quite make this happen. But I think children these days, the reality, and I quite often say to parents, the reality is your child will never write. Your child will use technology for everything in their daily lives. And the world has changed and we mustn't take away from that. So things like learning to code, that's an amazing skill.
Yeah, and it is good, but again, we're probably quite old-fashioned in we still, when we sit down at the dinner table, we have no screens. Even as adults, I know that I could be like, oh, I'll just have a quick scroll on Facebook because I'm sick of trying to shove their spoon in their face for, the 10th time. But we're quite strict with the dinner table that we will not have screens. We might put music on Alexa, but it's different if we go out. So if we go out for dinner, we do take the iPads. Beforehand, we try to get them to do their colouring. And after, if they've scoffed their little dinners and we want to sit and enjoy a couple of, a couple of drinks and finish our dinner in peace, we will get the iPads out. But what we do to break that up is we delay their pudding. And then we'll say, right, ice cream time. And we'll order that ice cream after we've finished our dinner and relaxed. And then they're willing to give the iPads up. So, yeah, it's a good tip.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think there has to be, I think it comes back to we spoke about in previous episodes about boundaries. And I think it's just really important that, there is a boundary. And it's like you say, if you sat down to dinner, your iPad and your technology and your touch screen stuff shouldn't be at the dinner table, because that's a time when you should be having family conversation and you should be talking. And that's the danger, is when screen time, as in your device time, overtakes your family time. There was somebody in the team gave a lovely quote earlier on, where they said, screen time or green time. And it's really important that green time, that outside time and that family time and that conversation time must never be compromised for technology.
Mm-hmm. I think with that one, as adults, we're probably worse than the kids for being on our phone. Like, the addiction to your phone, it is real. And they've shown now with a study that when you light up that brain, the addiction part that links to, extreme drug use is the same in gaming as it is in drugs like heroin, which is actually really scary. And I think the older you get, the teenagers are really, really getting addicted to their tablets. The way I deal with it, there is a lot. There's an email come in, you're paying your bills on your phone, everything's on your phone. And in a way, I wish we weren't as heavily reliant on our phone, but we are, because everything's digital these days. I do try to leave my phone upstairs, and then I'll be like, we are doing a puzzle, and I'll put a time limit on it and say, right, we're going to do puzzles for 1 hour. But again, the quote that one of the girls gave before about trade screen time for green time, that's my biggest mum hack. And I think my safe space with the kids, where I won't go on my phone, is the swimming pool. Oh, yeah. We've always lived in hot countries, so when you're in the pool, you do not go on your phone. So I always make sure we swim so much with the kids, and I know they're going to have my undivided attention. And that's like my little go-to when I feel guilty for sitting and being on my phone and doing lots of work, or just, I just mindlessly scroll. And another thing I've started to do is leave a book next to, when they watch the telly, I don't want to watch Peppa Pig, and I will pick my book up and try and read rather than just, doom scroll on Instagram.
I think it's a really good idea, because I think children need to see you reading, because they copy, don't they, as well? Yeah. And while you're here, I'm going to pick your brains. How do you make technology safe? What safeguards do you put in to make sure that your children are surfing in a safe space?
So there is children versions of a lot of things. Like there's YouTube, and obviously they have their kids' Netflix, they have the kids' YouTube. However, YouTube can be really unsafe, and there is no way to protect that unless you do not have it. There was something in the news a while ago. This person created what looked like this little fairy program, and she taught the kids it repeated it. So it was very, like a trance. And it was saying that if you go down and turn the magic gas on, or your family will become fairies in the middle of the night.
No.
Yeah, and kids were watching it and becoming really entranced of, oh my gosh, I want my family to be fairies. And this girl went down and turned the gas on in the night. And luckily the family found out and stopped it. But people put really sick things on YouTube. I'm really quite against YouTube. I've deleted it from everywhere in the house. When we do have it on, it's on our telly, and they might watch, my daughter likes to do yoga, and there's fun programs where they run along. But it is hard to protect kids, I think, as well, if you've got teenagers and they're in their bedroom. Again, I think boundaries around that, turning the internet off, so they or taking their tablet physically away from their bedroom. And I think as well, you need to have your teenager's password and check, because there can be a lot of online bullying. So the only way to protect them, you can't. They can get around everything. They just can. They're just so clever. You have to physically monitor what they're doing on their devices.
I'm going to touch again. You mentioned about bullying, and my son was actually subjected to social media bullying. Mm. But I think one of the dangers is that, in the old days, bullying in school was words, and you left school and you left the words behind. But when they come into your bedroom through your tablet and they're written words, they're never left behind. They're very unerasable to some extent. And I think bullying through social media is something that's a very big problem these days.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. I have heard the story of what your son went through, and it must have been awful as a parent. And that was probably back when technology, it was very new, it was booming. They are bringing in laws and they're bringing in, policies on what can be done. But I think it's just educating your children. Like, if you put a naked picture on the internet, it can never be erased. It will always be there. And I think the young children are, that teenagers, they're putting things on Snapchat thinking it only shows for 24 hours. Well, no, people take screenshots of it and they share it, and then it gets shared again, and then it's global, and you can't ever get rid of that digital footprint. Unfortunately, it's always in the archives of the cloud somewhere or other. So it's just about educating them, saying you can't do that. They are bringing in things to say that is actually your content and you own it, and if other people share it without your permission, there is going to be laws against it. But how do you implement that? It's going to be a very difficult law to be able to keep up with the digital world.
I mean, I worry, and it's always a big thing that my generation says is, thank goodness internet wasn't around when we were younger, because we got away with so much. But your generation, and your children's generation, everything they do is preserved for, their grandchildren almost to see what they were up to. And I think it's very important that social media is a safe, clean space. It'll be looked at by their future job, future employers will look at it, their future grandparents, their in-laws, whatever it's going to be. And that history of them is no longer a memory. It's something that's very, very physical for the rest of their lives. And I think it's very important that we remember that as parents.
Yeah, and I think, again, it just goes back to what the boundaries and the values you instill as your, in your children as we grow up. Because there's been people on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and people have dug into their archives of 10 years ago when they were 17 and said something, that was inappropriate, and they've been, took off the show. So I think it's just about telling your kids, the same as the way our parents did when we were younger. You can't do that, you'll get in trouble with the police. So just pushing those values into the children that, okay, if you put this picture on the internet, it might come back and bite you, so it's about teaching them what's right and what's wrong, and also having that open policy with them. If you're getting bullied, come to see me. And I think that's for me, I definitely will not allow my children their tablets or their devices in their bedrooms after, when they're teenagers, because they will not switch off from that bullying or anything, that even if it's how many likes do they get, it could be a positive thing. And it's such a shame that technology has brought us this downside, because it's also brought us, my mum and dad have hardly any pictures of me from when I'm a baby. I have thousands of my children, yes, and, videos, and they love looking back at them. So it brings us really positive things, but there's also a lot we need to change our values as we grow. Yes,
totally agree. And I mean, one of the things, Facebook and social media, they've got age restrictions for a reason, and circumventing those age restrictions so your child can have social media, what is the point?
I mean, again, age restrictions. I spoke to a teenager the other day who said they get a digital copy of ID, and they change the name and they change the pictures. So, we're getting around everything with technology. So yes, they can put age restrictions on things, and even you can change the place, the location you're logging into from. So unfortunately, I think it's more to do with the values we instill in our children than expecting the digital laws and technology to put in place their boundaries, because we're going to find a way around them.
Yeah. So our takeaways from today are very much about digital boundaries, to make sure that, if you are using digital devices, there's time boundaries, there's appropriate content boundaries, usage boundaries. There's boundaries in terms of you as a parent, making sure that you're not always on your device, you're present for your child as well. And, there's an awful lot of positives. The negatives come with everything that's new, and finding a way to live with it and navigate it is so important. What do you want to take away from today?
Yeah, I just think it's, as a parent, trying to put those values in, but also not beating yourself up. I think as long as you know what you do with your children and so if you also take them to the park and you also go swimming with them, some days they might have 5 hours on their tablets because everyone's sick, it's a Sunday. Don't beat yourself up. Don't feel guilty about what you're doing. As long as you know you do things all round and you have different things going on in the day. There was that famous, it went viral during COVID, that someone saw a mum in the supermarket with their child on a tablet. But my kids are awake for 13 hours a day. I don't put them on a tablet. You might see me in the shops because I want to go to the mall. I throw them both on an iPad because I want to shop for 2 hours and without them whinging. But the rest of the day, you haven't seen that I've took them to the park. I've done my colouring. So just don't feel judged, Sometimes I do. I sit in a restaurant and go, oh, I look like the worst mum. They had a tablet. But I think for the other 10 hours of that day, I've been running around the park. I've cooked them dinner. We've made cakes. And just don't think about what other people's views are on you, as long as you have those values and boundaries.
And use it. I think use it realistically. Use it productively. Don't use it as a nanny service. Use it to enhance rather than to care for. And I think then you'll probably get the balance right. Thank you. Joining Nicole and myself as we discuss technology. As you know, a conversation that I particularly do not enjoy and will continue to disenjoy for many years to come. I did hear, however, recently a conversation that was talking about technology and about those in-apps and those games that children play on computers. And it basically said, you do not get anything out of this. The only person who gets anything out of you being part of a game is the developer, where they are making money. And I thought that was a really interesting statement that really resonated with me. Please join us again as we pick up other topics of discussion and hopefully of interest to you and your families. Another podcast will be out next Friday.